The Intermediate Lifecycle Courses. Service Operation. Lesson 9. Implementation Considerations. Welcome to Lesson 9. In this lesson, we're going to study the implementation considerations associated with service operation. These include understanding the following areas: managing change in service operation, project management in service operation, assessing and managing risk in service operation, and planning and implementing service operation technologies. The information that we cover in this lesson is related to Syllabus Section SO07. If you wish to carry out further self-study around this lesson in the Service Operation Core volume, you'll find the appropriate book references in the syllabus document. Within the Service Operation Core volume, it is noted that service operation is a life cycle phase, not an entity in its own right. So, to talk about implementing service operation is not entirely correct. However, we do need to consider some of the generic service operation implementation considerations that will apply within most organizations and could affect multiple service operation processes and functions. Let's start to look at these implementation considerations now. The first area that needs to be addressed is the management of change within service operation. We have already discussed the balance between stability and responsiveness in Lesson 3. Even though we may not be talking about large transitions, we still need to consider how we approach changes within the operational space. The main considerations will be identifying change triggers, assessing change, and measuring the success of change. What common operational changes do you see in your organization? How do you find out about change, and how do you manage it? Change triggers in the service operation phase of the life cycle could include, for example, response to legislative changes, components becoming obsolete, and new or upgraded hardware and software. Think about your operations environment. What other changes might you see? We also need to make sure operations staff are involved in change assessment. This will allow them to feed in any concerns and could even influence the timing and implementation plan for the change. Remember, operations staff need to be involved all the way through, from the early stages of the change all the way through to the scheduling point. Involving operations staff during the change will start the process of knowledge transfer and ensure operations are aware of any peak times when more staff may be required. Think about the impact of not involving operations staff in change assessment. How would this affect the organization? The last area to consider for operational changes is how to measure their success. The ITIL Core volume suggests we measure the success of operational changes by their transparency to end users. Only enhancements should be visible, without any degradation or interruption to live service. Think about the time you upgraded some operational hardware or software. Was there any negative impact to end users? The next area we're going to look at during this lesson is the relationship between service operation and project management. Because many of the changes within the operational area are seen as small or low risk, the application of project management methodologies, such as PRINCE2, is not always considered. However, when we consider programs of work, such as a major hardware refresh or an operating system upgrade, the justification for applying some formal procedures is apparent. The benefits of applying project management methodologies to operational work include Visibility of project goals. Clearly stated and communicated benefits. Funding and resource control. And consistency and quality control. Overall, this can lead to greater credibility too. Okay, so far we've looked at change management and project management within service operation. Next, we need to consider how we manage risk in the operational space. Effective risk assessment is vital within service operation. For example, when staff are assessing changes or known errors. Staff will need a combination of personal knowledge and capability combined with risk management guidance and frameworks to help them be effective in this area. Some of the situations that require operations staff to assess risk will include assessment of failures or potential failures, for example, those communicated via event management. Assessment of projects and their impact on the live environment. Assessment of environmental risks. Assessment of supplier-side risks. Assessment of security risks. And assessment of new customer or service-associated risks. As you can see from this list, it's incorrect to think of risk management as applying only to the earlier areas of the life cycle. Another implementation consideration that we need to study relates to how service operations staff engage with design and transition activities and processes. Service operations staff can provide vital contextual information about the infrastructure and live environment to both development and transition staff to make sure new services will work effectively and meet their criteria for utility and warranty. Operations staff can also help to start the process of awareness building and communication when a new service is getting ready to launch. Involving operations staff in service design ensures the service will be supportable. Within the ITIL context, supportable means can be supported using existing or pre-agreed resources levels and skill sets. Will not adversely affect other operational areas. Will not have any unexpected costs. Will not cause legal or contractual complications. And will not have overly complex internal and external support paths. For example, between multiple support departments or third-party organizations. If there is too much complexity, inefficiencies may develop. Are your operations staff involved in design and transition? If they aren't, do you see any negative consequences as a result of this? The last area to consider in terms of service operation implementation relates to the planning and implementation of service management technology. Organizations need to carefully plan the deployment of ITSM support tools. The following areas need to be taken into consideration: licenses, deployment, capacity, timing, and type of introduction. Let's study these one by one. So, let's explore the first toolset implementation consideration, which is licensing. The cost of any service management toolset will normally be determined by the number of licenses required. A number of different license models may be offered, depending on the software supplier involved. The most common models for licensing are as follows. Dedicated licenses. These are for staff that need frequent or extended use of the software. The service desk, for example, would need to be logged in almost constantly while on shift and answering calls. Shared licenses. These are suitable for staff who will use the software frequently but with long gaps between logins. For example, engineers who work on the road may come into the office once a week and update their incidents. The number of engineers who could share a license would need to be calculated so that enough shared licenses were procured. Shared licenses may also be more expensive than dedicated licenses, but fewer will be required, so there may be an overall cost saving. Web licenses. These licenses may offer light interface kind of access via a web front end. They are suitable for staff that need occasional access, or perhaps only a very small area of the functionality. This license would be suitable, for example, for users logging incidents via self-help functionality. These licenses are often cheaper than other licenses, and a number may even be received free of charge with the toolset. Many service management toolsets are now modular, meaning you can choose those modules that are pertinent to your requirements, so each purchaser must carefully research what modules are really required in order to get the functionality they need.
An alternative model to traditional licensing is the new concept of service on demand. Suppliers may offer access to an application for a set period, and then close down access when it is no longer needed. The customer pays for the time they have access to the application rather than licenses. This is offered by some ITSM tool suppliers. Why not do some online research and see if you can find some? This option may be attractive to some smaller organizations or for access to specialized toolsets that are used infrequently. A variation to service on demand is where access to a tool is provided as part of a consultancy engagement. For example, if an organization engages some specialist capacity or availability management consultants, they may include access to a tool as part of the assignment fees. Another variation is software that is licensed on an agent or activity basis. For example, simulation software that is used to test the performance of an organization's website may be charged based on the number of agents, their location, and the activity they generate. Whatever licensing structure we choose, we must fully understand it before a decision is made, so there are no costly surprises.
Another area to consider when planning and implementing service management technology is deployment. All deployment should use formal service transition methodologies and release and deployment management. Whether the deployment is to be manual or automated, careful planning and testing needs to be carried out, with the CMS updated as the rollout progresses. The type of rollout also needs to be considered. Will there be a big bang rollout covering all sites at once, or will a phased approach be preferred instead? Most organizations will already have existing toolsets, so this will shape and influence the way any further rollouts must be done. Data migration from any existing toolsets or information sources must also be carefully managed to ensure the new tool isn't immediately filled with irrelevant, compromised, or unverified data. Capacity management considerations also need to be taken into account when deploying software. It would be ironic if the service management toolset deployment caused a massive surge in network traffic and essentially broke the network. Management information and log files may be transferred across the network as part of the normal operation of the service management tool, so capacity requirements will need to be planned in advance. The timing of the deployment of technology also needs to be considered. If tools are deployed before a level of service management maturity is in place, the tool itself may be seen as the solution to service management quality issues. This may mean attention is diverted away from the development and implementation of processes and procedures. If we only focus on the tool or product, then there is a real danger this will cause a loss of momentum on other relevant areas, such as processes. Organizations need to make sure that they do not buy a tool that dictates the processes that must be used and will not work for them. Equally, a service management toolset may help to shape new service processes that will work for the organization and may improve their ways of working. In reality, some processes cannot be carried out efficiently without a tool, so there is a balance here in making sure the tool is brought in at the right time, not too late and not too early. One final consideration, and an important one, is training. Training people on how to use and get the very best out of the tools deployed must also be provided at the appropriate time, with additional support provided where necessary immediately after go live.
Okay, here's an exercise to finish up this lesson. This exercise will test your planning abilities around the deployment of a new ITSM toolset. You should plan to spend around 30 minutes on this exercise. Imagine you are the project manager deploying a new integrated ITSM toolset. You work in a large organization with an outsourced service desk, and the toolset includes self-help functionality delivered via a web front end. You are now working on your training plan. Document who you think needs to be trained, what level of training they need, and how that training should be delivered. Why not pause the video and attempt this exercise now?